Slide into a cracked vinyl booth under a buzzing neon sign, and you'll instantly hear a sharp-tongued waitress yell a legendary phrase across the counter. "Kiss my grits!" Mel's Diner from the classic sitcom Alice was the ultimate blueprint for the American roadside greasy spoon. But the real irony? For a diner famous for that catchphrase, Mel Sharples' Desert Oasis menu rarely, if ever, actually served a plate of authentic Southern grits. Instead, Mel was fiercely protective of his notoriously questionable bean-packed chili and his mystery meat blue plate specials. The television set in Phoenix was fictional, but the highway diners it took inspiration from were entirely real. Today, we are pulling up a stool to look back at 21 classic, hearty roadside diner foods that have quietly vanished from the American highway. Let's get to it. Number 21. Mel's Subway Sludge Chili. You can't pull up a stool at Mel's Diner without talking about his ultimate signature dish. Mel Sharples guarded his secret chili recipe with his life, despite the fact that Alice, Flo, and Vera routinely complained that it looked like toxic waste and caused immediate indigestion. In the real world, 1970s truck stop chili was a heavy, greasy masterpiece. It was slow-simmered on the back burner for hours, packed with kidney beans, coarse ground beef, and a thick layer of chili oil on top. It wasn't fancy, and it always arrived at the counter in a thick ceramic bowl with a side of saltine crackers wrapped in cellophane. Number 20. The Scrambled Two breakfast. During the morning rush, the diner walls echoed with the sound of the short-order cook slamming a spatula on the flat top. The absolute default order for the local truck drivers was the Scrambled Two. This was the blueprint for the classic greasy spoon breakfast. It featured 2 eggs scrambled directly on a butter-greased grill, a mountain of crispy hash browns shredded from real potatoes, thick-cut pork sausage links, and a side of heavily buttered wheat toast. It was hot, cheap, and served in under 4 minutes flat. Number 19. Flat-top counter burgers. When lunch hit, the menu shifted entirely to Mel's greasy flat-top burgers. These were not thick gourmet pub burgers. These were classic thin diner patties smashed down on a screaming hot grill to lock in the juices and create those perfect, crispy, lacy edges. They were served on a plain white squishy bun with a slice of processed American cheese, a single crinkle-cut pickle, and a side of thick, crinkle-cut fries that were dumped straight from the wire frying basket onto a paper-lined plastic basket. Number 18. Rubber-Glazed Meatloaf. Meatloaf was the recurring dinner special that Mel would aggressively force upon any customer who walked through the door. While the show joked about its rubbery texture, classic diner meatloaf from this era was a staple of American comfort food. It was a dense blend of ground beef and pork, packed with crushed saltine crackers or breadcrumbs, and baked with a thick, sweet tomato ketchup glaze that got perfectly caramelized and burnt around the edges of the loaf pan. Sliced thick, it was always served swimming in a pool of salty brown gravy right next to a giant scoop of instant mashed potatoes. Now, if you actually visit the real-life Mel's Diner in Phoenix, Arizona today, the exact location used for the show's exterior shots, they lean heavily into the joke. Their actual breakfast menu now features a unique option explicitly named the Kiss My Grits breakfast. But as any truck driver from the 70s or 80s will tell you, Mel's Diner was just one stop on a massive network of legendary American greasy spoons. When you pulled off the interstate back then, the menu boards were packed with unique, comforting dishes that you'll have a hard time finding today. Let's look at the rest of the extinct roadside classics that defined the golden age of the American highway diner. Number 17. The open-faced hot turkey sandwich. Long before fast casual drive-thrus took over the interstate exits, this was the ultimate late-night comfort food order for tired travelers. A short-order cook would take 2 thick slices of plain, soft white bread, arrange them corner to corner on a heavy oval plate, and pile them high with tender slices of slow-roasted turkey breast. Then came the magic touch. The entire plate was completely smothered in a rich, piping hot lake of savory giblet gravy. It was always served right next to a giant, perfect scoop of instant mashed potatoes, with a signature gravy crater dug out of the middle. Every bite was warm, salty, and heavy enough to put an anxious driver straight to sleep. Number 16. The Blue Plate, Liver and Onions. This was a permanent anchor on the weekly diner rotation, usually reserved for a quiet Tuesday or Wednesday night special when the local regulars crowded the counter. Beef liver was dredged by hand in a simple seasoned flour mixture and pan-fried in a well-seasoned cast-iron skillet. But the secret was the onions. The cook would toss a massive mountain of sliced yellow onions into the same pan, letting them sizzle in the renderings until they became sweet, deeply caramelized, and translucent. It was a rustic, polarizing dish that filled the entire diner with a rich, unmistakable aroma, a meal that separated the true highway regulars from the casual tourists. Number 15. Counter Case Meringue Pies. No diner meal was truly complete until you looked over at the rotating glass display case sitting right next to the cash register. Alongside the standard cherry and apple pies sat the true royalty of the diner dessert menu: mile-high lemon meringue and chocolate silk pies. These weren't machine-made or pulled from a freezer box. They were baked fresh in the back kitchen every single morning. They featured a flaky lard crust and a massive, perfectly toasted mound of fluffy egg white meringue. The peaks were always browned just right by the oven's heat, making it almost impossible to leave the diner without asking for a slice to go in a small cardboard box. Number 14. Bottomless Battery Acid Coffee. It didn't matter if it was 2 in the afternoon or 3 in the morning. The backdrop of every single deep conversation or late-night laugh was a thick, heavy ceramic mug of black coffee. Poured endlessly by a waitress who could effortlessly carry 2 glass carafes at once, this coffee often sat on a burning hot plate for hours. It was piping hot, strong enough to instantly wake up a long-haul trucker, and cost a mere 25 cents with free refills. You'd spoon in a bit of sugar from a glass shaker, stir it with a tiny metal spoon, and let the warmth clear the fog of a long night on the highway. Number 13. The Iron-Pressed Patty Melt. If you couldn't decide between a juicy burger or a grilled cheese sandwich, the diner cook would point you directly toward the patty melt. This wasn't a delicate sandwich. It was built on thick, hearty slices of rye bread loaded with caraway seeds. The cook would smash a fresh ground beef patty onto the hottest part of the flat top it with a generous layer of sweet grilled onions, and sandwich it between 2 thick slices of sharp Swiss cheese. Then, the entire sandwich was heavily buttered and pressed directly onto the greased grill under a heavy iron weight. When it landed on your formica counter, the cheese was perfectly melted, the bread was intensely crunchy, and the grease would lightly soak through the paper liner of your plastic basket. Number 12. Sizzling Chicken Fried Steak. Originating as a clever way to make tough cuts of beef incredibly tender, chicken fried steak quickly became the undisputed king of the diner dinner menu. The cook would take a piece of tenderized cube steak, dredge it in a heavily seasoned flour batter, and drop it straight into a bubbling vat of hot grease. It came out looking like a massive piece of fried chicken, boasting a golden, jagged crust that shattered with every fork split. It was traditionally served resting on a bed of rich, velvety mashed potatoes and completely blanketed in a thick, peppery white cream gravy made right from the pan drippings. It was a heavy, soul-warming meal that demanded you take your time eating it. Number 11. Creamy Chicken a la King. This comfort food classic was a permanent fixture on the lunch counter chalkboard, especially on chilly autumn days. It was a rich, velvety mixture of tender, pulled white meat chicken, sweet green peas, diced pimentos, and sliced mushrooms, all simmered low and slow in a luxurious, savory cream sherry sauce. Instead of being served over standard rice, a traditional diner would ladle this piping hot mixture directly inside a light, flaky puff pastry shell or over a thick slice of toasted Texas toast. It was beautifully colorful, incredibly rich, and tasted exactly like a home-cooked Sunday dinner made by a grandmother who had all day to spend in the kitchen. Number 10. Thick glass mug milkshakes. Before fast food drive-thrus started dispensing synthetic soft serve out of a plastic machine, a real diner milkshake was treated as a true work of art. The waitress would scoop hard, premium vanilla or chocolate ice cream into a heavy metal mixing canister, splash in fresh whole milk, and pump in real malt powder or rich Hershey's syrup. She'd lock the canister into a green, wall-mounted Hamilton Beach mixer that whirred to life, blending everything until it was incredibly thick. It was served to you in a chilled, heavy glass goblet, alongside the remaining half of the milkshake left right in the frosty metal canister, so you could pour yourself a second helping halfway through. Number 9. The grilled patty melt with real beef suet. While some modern chains try to recreate the patty melt today, they miss the secret ingredient that made the mid-century diner version completely legendary: real beef suet. The short-order cook would take thick, fragrant slices of authentic rye bread loaded with caraway seeds and place them on a flat top greased with rendered beef fat rather than modern vegetable oil. A fresh ground beef patty was smashed down hard, piled high with yellow onions that had been sweetening on the cool side of the grill all morning, and capped with Swiss cheese. The heavy iron grill press didn't just toast the bread, it fused the beef juices, melted cheese, and caramelized onions directly into the crispy crust. When you bit into it, the crunch was loud, deeply savory, and left a rich coating of authentic flavor you just can't find in modern restaurants. Number 8. Hot, open-faced commercial sandwiches. This uniquely named roadside staple has almost completely vanished from American highways. Commercial was the old diner shorthand for a quick, heavy lunch designed for traveling salesmen and truckers. The cook would place 2 slices of plain white sandwich bread on a heavy oval platter, slice a warm, savory loaf of beef or pork roast, and layer the meat directly on top. Using a massive ladle, they would completely drown the entire plate, bread and all, in a rich, glistening wave of dark brown pan gravy. It was always anchored by a giant mound of instant mashed potatoes right in the center, acting as a dam to hold back the gravy. It was hot, salty, and designed to be eaten with a knife and fork, as the soft white bread completely dissolved into the rich sauce. Number 7. Deep-fried chicken gizzards and livers. Once a mandatory snack sitting under the glowing heat lamps of every highway diner counter, deep-fried gizzards and livers have been entirely scrubbed from modern menus. The cook would take fresh gizzards or rich iron-packed chicken livers, soak them in whole buttermilk, and toss them in a heavily seasoned flour mixture packed with black pepper and garlic powder. They were dropped into a deep vat of bubbling lard until the exterior turned into a jagged, dark, golden armor. Served in a simple paper basket lined with grease-soaked wax paper, the gizzards offered a distinct, satisfyingly chewy bite, while the livers were intensely rich and velvety on the inside. They were always eaten piping hot, dipped into a small plastic cup of tangy, vinegar-based hot sauce or white cream gravy. Number 6. Individual baked chicken. Pot pies in tin tins. Long before grocery store freezers were flooded with mass-produced versions, diners baked individual chicken pot pies from scratch every morning, serving them right in the heavy aluminum tins they were cooked in. The diner kitchen would simmer a thick, velvety veloute sauce packed with pulled chicken meat, sweet green peas, diced carrots, and celery. This filling was poured into a homemade lard crust and capped with a beautiful, hand-crimped top crust. As they baked in the back oven, the fat from the lard would bubble up, turning the pastry into a flaky, shatteringly crisp, golden lid. When the waitress set the steaming tin on your counter, you would take your fork and break through the top crust, releasing a thick cloud of savory, comforting steam that smelled exactly like home. Number 5. Authentic cream sodas. Despite the name, a true diner egg cream contained neither eggs nor cream. and it is a soda fountain art form that has completely died out. Originating in city diners and roadside stops, it required absolute precision from the fountain clerk. They would squirt 2 ounces of ice-cold Fox's You Bet chocolate syrup into the bottom of a heavy, chilled glass tumbler, follow it with cold whole milk, and then blast the glass with high-pressure seltzer water straight from a vintage chrome draft arm. Using a long-handled metal spoon, they would rapidly whip the mixture from the bottom up. This created a perfectly dark chocolatey base topped with a massive snowy white, velvety head that looked exactly like whipped cream. It was light, intensely fizzy, and had to be drank immediately at the counter before the delicate foam head collapsed. Number 4. The Real Deal Hot Open-Faced Pork Tenderloin. While you can occasionally find a basic pork sandwich today, the authentic mid-century diner version has entirely disappeared. The cook would start with a fresh pork tenderloin, butterfly it by hand, and pound it out with a heavy metal mallet until it was wide enough to hang completely over the edges of a large dinner plate. It was dredged in an egg wash and seasoned saltine cracker crumbs, then fried in a shallow skillet until the edges were beautifully jagged and dark golden brown. To serve it commercial style, it was placed over 2 slices of buttered white bread and completely blanketed in a thick, savory pork pan gravy. It was a massive, comforting mountain of food that required a knife and fork, tasting deeply of black pepper, toasted crackers, and slow-simmered pork renderings. Number 3. True slow-simmered creamed chipped beef on toast. Universally known by its old military nickname, SOS, this rustic dish was a mandatory fixture on every highway diner's breakfast board for decades. It relied on authentic dried beef, thinly shaved, salt-cured beef that was soaked in warm water to draw out the excess salt. The cook would melt real butter in a pan, stir in flour to create a rich roux, and slowly whisk in whole milk to build a dense, velvety white cream sauce. The strips of savory dried beef were tossed in, along with a heavy hand of coarse black pepper. Ladled boiling hot over 2 slices of thick, deeply toasted Texas toast, the cream would slowly soak into the center of the bread, while the edges stayed perfectly crunchy. It was simple, intensely savory, and provided the kind of heavy, stick-to-your-ribs warmth that kept long-haul drivers alert for hours. Number 2. Authentic Diner Tapioca Pudding with the Skin. Before dessert menus were taken over by frozen, factory-made cakes, every real diner had a massive stainless steel bowl of homemade tapioca pudding chilling behind the counter glass. This wasn't the smooth, synthetic pudding pulled from a modern plastic cup. It was made from scratch using real pearl tapioca, fresh milk, sugar, and egg yolks, slow-cooked on the stove until the pearls became perfectly translucent, plump, and chewy. It was poured into heavy glass dessert goblets and allowed to cool naturally in the refrigerator. This slow cooling process formed a distinct, slightly firm, and intensely rich skin across the top layer. To true diner lovers, breaking through that top skin with a heavy metal spoon to reach the cool, creamy, vanilla-flecked pudding underneath was the absolute best part of the entire meal. Number 1. The flaky, old-school diner patty shell. Taking the number 1 spot is a delicate piece of vintage bakery artistry that has been completely scrubbed from modern commercial cooking: the homemade diner patty shell. Long before puff pastry was bought frozen in flat sheets, diner bakers would spend hours rolling and folding layers of chilled dough with cold lard to create a multi-layered pastry block. Using a sharp round cutter, they would shape individual deep wells and bake them until they puffed up into golden, hollow, shatteringly crisp towers. These fragile shells were kept warm under a towel on the back counter. When an order came in for creamed chicken, a la king, or creamed seafood, the waitress would place a fresh shell on a plate and ladle the rich, bubbling cream mixture directly inside the hollow center. The hot sauce would soften the inside layers into a melt-in-your-mouth pastry cream, while the outer shell remained incredibly flaky and crisp, creating a perfect contrast of textures that modern restaurants simply don't take the time to make anymore. And there you have it. There was a special kind of comfort in knowing that no matter how dark the highway got, or how many miles were left on the dashboard, a bright neon sign and a friendly face were always just around the corner. Mel's Diner and the hundreds of real-life greasy spoons just like it weren't just places to grab a cheap bite to eat. They were local landmarks where a heavy porcelain mug of coffee and a warm plate of comfort food made you feel right at home, even when you were hundreds of miles away. Most of those vintage menu boards are gone now, but the memories of those quiet late-night counters do not have to disappear with them. If these vanished dishes brought back a wave of nostalgia for you today, please drop a comment below and let me know which roadside classic you miss the most. Thank you so much for pulling up a stool with me today, and until next time, keep those memories fresh, and I'll see you in the next video.